the Christian notion of spiritual truth. It is the moral or ethical notion of a kind of personal integrity, and there's also a philosophical truth in a perspective of reality that's really based on Stoics and comes up to Chaucer through Boethius. But it's a really fascinating little poem on many levels. For one, just verbally, the language of Chaucer, the Middle English, is at first glance kind of strange, and modern readers will be a little confused by it. But as you hear it, as you read it out loud, it actually starts to become quite coherent, and you can surprise yourself by how much Middle English you know. And also just the subtleties of themes going on there. You're starting to see a bit of a tension in Chaucer, where it's in his other work too, but here this really comes out pretty significantly, I would say. A bit of a tension between the role of the pious pilgrim, and also a kind of struggling individuality and humanity, a kind of incarnate focus that will take root in the Renaissance to come. It is just a very simple four stanzas. Very regular rhythm, very regular rhyme scheme. What is it? ABA, BBCC, very regular throughout. And the topic is a kind of, it is essentially a stoicism, a putting, a distancing yourself from the cares of the world, and a trust in God and the glorious ever after. Flee from the press, and dwell with softfastness. Suffice unto thy thing, though it be small. For hoard hath hate, and climbing tinkleness. Priest hath envy, and wail blent over all. Savour no more than thee behove shall. Rule well thyself, and other folk canst read. And truth shall deliver, it is no dread. That first stanza, again, a little bit confusing. Flee from the press of the crowd. Flee from the crowd. Flee from, cities. Flee from popularity. Flee from worldly concerns in general. And soothfastness is essentially truth. Suffice unto thy thing. Be satisfied with what you have, though it be small. That's what was pretty easy to read. For hoard hath hate, and climbing tinkleness. For the hoard hath hate. Hoard hath hate. Here you're seeing Chaucer experiment with the alliteration that that was so prominent throughout Old English poetry. Hoard hath hate, and climbing tinkleness. Hoard hath hate. So there's envy in the crowd, among the worldly groups of humanity, and climbing, and this a kind of social climbing, or the natural grasping nature after worldly goods. Tickleness is insecurity. Perhaps also a kind of vulnerability. Would a press have envy? The crowd has envy, and well blent overall. Prosperity blinds overall. Prosperity, worldly goods, leaves you blind. Savoir, savor. There you see a little French seeping in. Remember, Chaucer is very based in London, settled on the outskirts of the court, necessarily. He is imbibing that Frenchified court, and you will see little French aspects and European concepts and words here seep in from time to time. Savor no more than thee behooves shall. Relish no more. Enjoy no more. Than is yours, than is justly yours, and is proper for you. To rule well thyself, and that other folk can't read. So control yourself, govern yourself, rule thyself. Don't be led by the crowd. And if you would govern others, you start with yourself. Remember, he is addressing this to a upper class. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. And then, the truth shall deliver. The truth shall set you free. It is no dread. It is no fear. Have no fear. However you want to couch that. But it is interesting. I find that he ends on that word dread, because that will be a repeated puncture throughout. He's really going to hit that word. Stanza 2, Tempest thee not, I'll croked to redresse, in trust of hire that turneth as a bow, mush well stand in little buxumnesse, beware therefore to spurn aens and all, strive not to as doth the crock with the wall, daunt thyself, that dauntest others' deed, and truth shall deliver, it is no dread. Tempest the knot, I'll croked to redresse. Don't worry yourself. Don't storm around getting yourself all worked up. Again, there's that stoicism, that anti-emotionalism, that rationalism seeping in. Tempest, I'll croked to redresse. Don't distress yourself. Don't worry yourself. Don't get all frustrated to correct every wrong, to redress every wrong, everything that's crooked. Don't try and solve every problem, or trust in her that turneth as a ball. That is Fortune, the popular medieval figure of Lady Luck, if you will. Always a troubling figure in a Christian context. In a spinning ball, much joy resides in little trouble, in little busyness. If you just keep things simple, if you just stay calm, you will experience joy. Don't get all worked up. Beware therefore to spurn aens and all, strive not as doth the crock with the wall. Those are two locutions. Those are two little sayings that pop up from time to time in literature of the period, that are an instance of a kind of vernacular smallness. Just think about the contrast. Right there, he is trying to make the point of don't get caught up in all the little things, don't sweat the small stuff. And so he goes to very small, localized language. He uses idiomatic expressions that to us, we don't really recognize them so much anymore. Medieval scholars would, sure, but it becomes very caught up in the local, in the world. And he is using language here to zero in on the exact point he's trying to make, that sometimes the little things you can get really caught up in, but they turn out to be meaningless. Daunt thyself that dauntest others dead, and truth shall deliver, it is no dread. Daunt thyself. Again, control thyself. Don't lose control. Don't get irrational. Master thyself that dauntest others deed. So again, that sense of, okay, for a ruler, you have to control yourself if you want to control others. That is that's a good classical notion, and it also has this sort of homey quality, almost like the same sort of cliche that he seemed to be poking a little fun of in just the line before. So the juxtaposition there is really curious. And truth shall deliver, it is no dread. Again, ending on dread, which is fear, which is anxiety about the ever after. Yes, he's dispelling it, but just the fact that it's repeating and ending on that line is, it's just reminding you. It's like the toll, that the bell that keeps tolling, and suggesting a kind of mortality that perhaps you would really rather put out of your mind. That thee is sent, receive in buxumnesse, the wrestling for the world axeth a fall. Here is none whom, here in this but wilderness, forth, pilgrim, forth, forth, beest out of thy stall. Know thy country, look up, thank God of all, hold the highway, and let thy ghost thee lead, and truth shall deliver, it is no dread. Yeah, well, what you are sent, receive in gratitude, in obedience. Whatever God gives you, you just accept. The wrestling of the world asks a fall. It's begging for you to get smacked down. If you are wrestling for the whole world, if you are fighting and striving for worldly goods, you're asking for trouble. Here is not home, here in this but wilderness. Classic Christian philosophy about don't focus on this world. This world is just the fallen way station. The real life is the afterlife with God in heaven. Forth, pilgrim, forth, forth, best out of thy stall. Forth, pilgrim. Remember, pilgrims so important in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, so important, of course, in Dante, one of Chaucer's great heroes. The idea of the journey of life is coming about there, and specifically a journey toward blessedness. Know thy country, look up, thank God of all. Thank God for everything. Know what you're about in this country, but keep your mind on the future. Keep to the highway. Keep to the highway. Take the high road, perhaps. But the highway here is the metaphorical way towards on high. And let thy ghost lead. Thy ghost is your soul, your spirit, and that is supposed to lead you. That will lead you, theoretically, confidently into the afterlife and life with God. But again, we end with, and the truth shall set you free, there is no doubt. Again, that repetition is just, it's a little stirring to me in an anxiety sense. The truth shall set you free. There is no doubt. There is have no fear. Therefore, thou Vache, leave thine old wretchedness, unto the world leave now to be thrall. Cry him mercy, that of his high godness made thee of naught, and in especial draw unto him and pray in general for thee and eke for other, heavenly-ish made, and truth shall deliver, it is no dread. Please forget my accent and all of this stuff, by the way. Vache is interesting. Vache is probably Sir Philip de la Vache. Scholars believe who was member of a landowning, wealthy, very well-connected family, the aristocracy. Apparently Philip had gotten in a little trouble, and he was kind of on the outs with the powers that be, and was feeling a little distressed. And so Chaucer, being a family friend and probably financially dependent on him, was just trying to buck him up and give him, again, remember the constant refrain of, if you want to lead, you have to be able to master yourself. If you want to control others, you need to control yourself. So this is an address to an aristocrat, perhaps one named Vache. The French sounding name is also sort of a little funny if you think about it, because Vache, of course, means cow. And what is a poet's relationship to the wealthy people other than to milk them for whatever support he can get? There's a fair amount of history that scholars dip into with the identity of Vache and his relationship to Chaucer, and Chaucer's punning on this, and perhaps packing a palindrome with his own name. And there's all that stuff going on. Not so critical, but it's an interesting little backstory to the poem. Leave thine own wretchedness. Leave behind your miserable life. Don't or put your mistakes behind you, perhaps. Unto the world leave now to be in thrall. To be in thrall is to be essentially a slave. To be caught up in the world. And again, leave that behind. Cry him mercy. Beg for mercy. Cry him. Him is probably God here. Cry him mercy, that of his high godness, make thee of naught. Made thee of naught. God made you from nothing. And in especial, draw unto him. Draw yourself to God. Pray in general for thee, for yourself, and eke for other, and for others, heavenly-ish made, about the heavenly reward in the afterlife. And truth shall deliver, it is no dread. Truth shall deliver, it is no dread. It's again, the sound of the language is a lot more clear than the spelling. Significantly, standardized spelling is a long way off in English, so the spelling could be a bit of a free-for-all. But the sound of the language really does bring it out. It doesn't sound all that different. You can muscle your way through this as just a lowly speaker of modern English. So that alone positions Chaucer at this curious crossroads of history, this moment of evolution. But also, I would say, just look at some of the thematic issues going on in this poem, where he is constantly putting off or casting his eye on the afterlife and on living the good godly life, but it is also noticeably, aside from a couple of fleeting references to God and heaven and the refrain from John, there's not a lot of Christianity floating around here. There's not a lot of biblical language. There's not a lot of references to the Gospels themselves. And the ideas behind it do seem rather caught up with traditional notions of philosophy itself, primarily pagan philosophy like the Stoics. So there's that tension going on, again, very much in concert with what we see in Boethius. But I think it's more than that, because for the poem itself, the ideas that he is sharing, the advice that he is giving to Vache, is a little flat as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't have a lot of verve to it poetically. There aren't a lot of really great images in it. There aren't a lot, well, this isn't really images, but it's a bit of a straitjacket poem. He's just sort of filling in a book of, good homiletic advice, the kind of stuff you would find on a grandmother's pillow embroidery or something, and offering it up in verse form. There's none of the vibrancy that we see in Chaucer's longer works, the Canterbury Tales. For one thing, he's kind of stuck with this polite little lyric form that doesn't have characters. The great joy in the Canterbury Tales is the vividness of the characters that come out and they argue with one another, and you get a real sense of perspective in one another, and that's where the real fun comes in. So here he doesn't really have that. I mean, he's couching it in a discussion to Vache, but that's that's not all of that reactive. He's not really getting much back from that. There's no sounding board. But also, it's just kind of stale. You really want him to have that vibrancy. And when he leads off his very first piece of advice of saying, avoid the crowd, and he comes back to that later and saying, the crowd is evil. Well, Chaucer, a man of the city, a social being, I can't believe he really disdains the crowd. I can't believe he doesn't like the press. He is a people person, very much so, and he's going to be enjoying taking in all of these people and all of these voices and being in the thick of the crowd. So when he is offering up that advice of, forget about the crowd, just think of the afterlife, that rings a little hollow to me. It's not that vibrantly rendered poetically. And so you see this kind of struggle where just beneath the surface of this relatively flat, Christian principles of disdaining worldly goods and focusing on the afterlife, just beneath the surface, there's this sense of yearning for something else, a sense of worldliness that is probably a greater gravitational pull on him than he wants his words to admit. And there, I think you see the coming of the Renaissance, that humanistic draw, that urge for recognition of human value and earthly value, that, yeah, sure, we're focused on the afterlife and we're all believers in Christ after all, but there's something good here too. There's something joyous about the crowd. There's something not evil about it. This little poem, labeled Truth, is a pivot point, I think, where, well, not a pivot point. I think this is tracking the progress. I think it's a mile marker, is what it is, I guess, of a culture, a world culture that is edging its way towards humanism and mouthing the words of Christianity, but with a really pulsing life just underneath it. And that contrast is just exhilarating.